Like, it just comes back to the people who held are the true believers, and they're, what is the difference between the treasury and book value? It's like the mean value or the network value, as 4156 is saying, right? It's like, well, if you believe in that, they are network value. That's it, right? And so what I think is like what remains of Nouns, which is most of it, by the way, but what remains of Nouns is like the highest quality people in all of Ethereum, who have positive attitudes, or positive some thinkers, want to do really cool stuff, super creative people, great engineers, people with track records. And so what do you find yourself in? A smaller DAO with more talented people. It's amazing.
Welcome back to Zero Rights Reserved, a weekly podcast about nouns, DAOs, NFTs, Ethereum, and more, brought to you by the Noun Square Media Collective. I'm your host, Toady Hawk, joined here by my co-host today, Robotfishgirl, and today we are hosting the passionate, prolific, and most of all, purple, Chris Carella. Welcome to ZEROPOD.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
We'd love to hear your story a little bit, Chris, maybe the origin story, the backstory about how you ended up working in crypto. Yeah, so can you take us back and run us through that journey?
I'll give you the not the long, not the short, but somewhere in the middle. I have been working for tech startups for almost 20 years now. I lived most of my life in New York, and so I was in like that New York startup scene.
The Brooklyn Mafia, is that what they call it?
Brooklyn Mafia, yeah.
That's what I heard it called recently, the Brooklyn Web3 Mafia.
Well, now there's like definitely like this. I don't know, there's definitely like a crypto scene that. I'm not in New York anymore, so I'm in Miami. That's one life difference. But what I see online is like Williamsburg seems to be this nexus of crypto people moving from other places to Brooklyn. That's where that seems to come from. But I've been working in tech for a long time. I've always been sort of a head of product or a co-founder, like the product-led co-founder. And so product design is really my passion. And I've done like lots of startups over the years, from consumer internet to data science research lab to an innovation studio. Have a couple of small exits along the way. Really, like in 2020, I found myself working at a startup studio. And so that was like one of my cooler things. For 5 years, I worked at a startup studio. We were cranking out 2 new companies every year. But we
this
had
is like an incubator, sort of like an incubator.
It's an incubator. Yeah, it was an incubator. I was head of product, and so what that usually meant was I was the head of product for every one of these companies until they raised money and spun out and did their own thing. So it was cool. We started off with doing software, which is what I love. We really towards 2020 got like end of 2019, 2020. Got really into consumer packaged goods, which was all the rage in that era. And I became like an expert in Shopify, which was not a thing that like I ever planned or want to or would ever want to do again. But it was like, I was the product guy who knew how to use Shopify, and we were spinning out these companies, some of them which were doing well. One is called Dole, which is a dietary fiber that you can find in every Target in the country. Cool. Yeah. So, but it was like not like my passion is software, right? And so building consumer
your
packaged
passion
goods
is not dietary fiber? Is that what you're telling us today?
I do love a good dietary fiber. Not gonna lie.
A good piece of software is just like dietary fiber. It keeps things moving, keeps things going.
That's it. You're regular. You have a routine with your software. So it just sort of like came. It was just sort of coming to the end, which is like I don't want to ship more plastic. Not the fiber was plastic, but came in plastic bottles. And then the pandemic hit, and that like I think like everyone had a chance to like really reevaluate what you want to do, And so sure. I left the startup studio. I'm also an artist, and at this time I had an art studio outside. I was living in Queens, had an art studio outside of my house, and so it's like I left the startup studio. It was like pandemic. It was like there was like no one on the streets, And I would walk over to my art studio, and I would paint every day and explore technology and see what was out there, and try to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I've had a lot of exposure to blockchain over the years, and so even though I wasn't working in it, I was like, a hobbyist to some extent, much less extent than I was today, but I was a hobbyist. And so one day I'm like painting, and I'm thinking about how do I validate these paintings? like, cool, this seems like actually good use for blockchain, And it was like through that research that I discovered NFTs.
Oh, I thought you
And
were going to tell us that you then went on to invent NFTs. So you were just thinking.
no, yeah, I try. I mean, listen, if Al Gore invented the internet, I could have invented NFTs, Um, so anyway, I discovered NFTs. I thought it would be really good to like validate physical paintings, and I was like not in the crypto bubble, so I was like sort of fresh eyes. It turns out like I didn't think if there are enough of value even today. I don't think it's a great way to validate physical works.
Interesting.
But I in that process discovered digital NFTs, like NFTs, and then like along that journey, pretty early on, I discovered NBA Top Shot. And the user experience of NBA Top Shot, I'm sure still to this day, was just so good. It was just so much better than anything else I had tried in crypto. And it was like the click, like, oh, this space is ready for me and like my talents and the way I like to design and create user-friendly products. I have a great, this is I think was hook, line, and sinker, which is I was like, oh, cool, I love basketball. Wow, this is really cool. The animations are amazing. My first, but like it wasn't like I heard it. Actually, this was before the buzz of Top Shot, so it was like still pretty early, and like I don't even how I found it. No one was talking about it, but I pulled this rare LeBron James card like in my first $5, and I like I was like looking on their marketplace, and people were selling it for like 20 grand, and I just kind of assumed like none of this is real. And so I didn't quite realize the rareness of the card I had. So I was like, let me just put that thing up for $1,000 and see what happens. What happened is it sold in like 5 seconds, like immediately sold,
Oh no. You're like, wait, what have I done?
I literally, but I'll tell you, I was like, that's amazing. I literally the same day went to the Chanel store, bought my wife shoes. And I was like, oh, I did some crazy internet thing today. Like, here's the thing.
Smart.
But anyway, that's like,
that was a smart decision.
That's good, right? She's
now
been
his
a big
wife
fan
likes
of crypto ever
NFTs.
since. She loves it, yeah.
I think it's really interesting how, like, even though many of us are like thoughtful participants in nouns and in blockchain now, sometimes that dopamine rush is really what gets a lot of people sort of hooked. And so Top Shot was actually one of my first experiences too, but I had no luck. I pulled nothing but garbage. I still enjoyed it, but it never really like pulled me in because I never had good luck with packs. But then I started getting into other NFTs, and actually one of my first PFP NFTs during that bull run was Pudgy Penguins. And so I bought this Pudgy Penguin, for 0.1 ETH and ended up, selling it for something like 4 ETH. And it was a very similar experience too, where I was like telling my wife, I'm like, this penguin, like I just bought it for like $10 and now I sold it for 8 grand. And she's like, that's great, honey. Like buy me some Chanel shoes. But that experience like gets you kind of hooked, and then you start looking more into it and eventually find the substance. But yeah.
For sure. And even like that moment, like, it was very like, what just happened? Like, how come I have 1,000? Like, what just happened? But also it was like, oh, this is real. Like, this website is real. Like, these people buying, like, of course, the internet and coming from like these startup tactics where maybe everything you're saying is could like use tactics like a button to nowhere, like, hey, you want to buy this? Click this button. And it was like only a website, and we never had the product, and we just wanted to see how many people could click that button. So I so like I just sort of didn't believe it. I saw this web, I saw the Top Shot market and things going back and forth, and I just assumed like wasn't real. And so when that moment happened, it was like, oh, there's something real happening here.
Wait, someone gave me real money for this. And then in your case, probably turned around and sold it for much more as well, it sounds like, maybe.
Yeah, I'm sure. And the other thing is, like, at the time, it's like I took that money and like immediately bought Chanel, but like I didn't realize that like you couldn't cash out of NBA Top Shot. There was no off ramp.
Whoops.
There was no off ramp. So basically, I just put a bunch of money on my credit card. Eventually, I had an off ramp, and I got out at the peak of Top Shot. But so discovered Top Shot, hook, line, and sinker, NFTs, got it, grokked it. Read all the stuff. Read like a couple of seminal pieces. Then just again was like in my art studio painting, tweeting a lot about NFT. I was like super pilled, right? And so like I'm tweeting a lot about it. And then someone from Tezos, a friend of mine actually from Tezos, a friend of mine from another life when we were like working in video games and comic books, reached out to me and was like, hey, the stuff you are tweeting about, like we need someone over here to do that.
Wow.
And so cool. So I didn't know what Tezos was from, I didn't know the difference between Tezos or whatever, Cardano, whatever. So I joined, really totally got my feet wet because we built the NFT spec while I was there. So I got to help participate in the Tezos NFT spec, minted the first NFT on mainnet.
Oh,
For
wow.
one reason, because I was a part of the team building it, and I just realized like we do everything on testnet. Does this really work? And then I was the first one to like mint on mainnet.
Providence.
Built an NFT platform. Yeah, I have Providence for sure. Then built an NFT platform for them called Truzy. And then it just sort of like I was working for TQ Tezos, which was like a big Tezos, was like a big company in the Tezos ecosystem, and TQ ran out of their funding, and so like the whole thing shut down. My my project gets shut down and everything, right? Like everyone gets laid off, right? And a few things happened. One, all right. So here's a few things. When I was in the Tezos ecosystem, I was highly encouraged to not touch other blockchains.
Right.
This is not like the positive sum environment that a lot of the blockchains have in like a multi-blockchain world. And so I literally stayed away from ETH because if I did post about like an ETH NFT, I would totally get a DM from someone from the foundation being like, hey, you know, we don't really do that around here, you know? And so when I left Tezos, it was like, okay, cool. Now I'm very well versed in the space.
You're free.
You know, it's like, I know how this works. What's going on in ETH, you know? And then it was like, oh my God, everything is actually going on in ETH. So that was like one part of it. But the second part of it was when I left, which was like, I don't know when it was, August 2021 or something. It was like peak Mania. And literally I didn't tell anyone I was leaving or what was happening. And then sort of my very last day, it was a Friday. I took a couple of coffees. I had multiple job offers by the time I like went to sleep that night. And part of it was I was just we were an early NFT platform. Everyone wanted to build an NFT platform. Like I had actually built one. So that was cool. But also like I got all of the hype Mania vibes and I wanted nothing to do with it. You know, it was like I was meeting these entrepreneurs who like raised $3 million yesterday. And, you know, it's like actually a bunch of these people who were like told me how super committed they are. It's like I can't even find them on the internet anymore. You know, it's like totally washed out in the bear market. But it was just a lot of that stuff, right? There was a lot of people looking for product people who knew crypto. Enough where I was like, okay, cool. I'm not going to do crypto because all of this feels wrong. And like all of these people feel wrong and these entrepreneurs are giving me bad vibes. And so I went to a friend's data science company and ran product there, and we built some music data science products.
That's I guess an underrated aspect of the bear market, which is good, which is that you actually know that the people that are sticking around and are working here, they actually care. Whereas in the bull market, they were there, but like finding them was very difficult because there's so much noise.
So, 100, totally. Then so two things happened. Professionally, I was like back in data science, but then my nights and weekends, I was like full on ETH, full on, you know, Ethereum guy, and found NFTs early on. The ETH NFTs were like, I mean, none of them exist really anymore. You know, it was definitely like the pump and dump stuff that I wasn't trying to pump and dump, you know, I just didn't quite have the lay of the land, certainly like we have in retrospect. So but I was definitely taken by like, oh, you join these Discords, there's lots of interesting people, they're trying to coordinate, there's some coordination happening here. So that was that. Then I found SharkDAO, you know, like very, very early on. Discovered Juicebox, bought in, you know, had my first Nouns experience through SharkDAO.
I didn't know you were OG SharkDAO, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, not one of the founders. There were people there before me, but they really, you know, it happened also, it was like I joined SharkDAO in like September, whatever it was of that year. It was very early. And there was so much like new energy around Nouns and then like so much energy happening in SharkDAO that like I couldn't keep up with the Discord. Like it was just, I mean, we all probably had those experiences in the bull market where like these Discords were just crazy, you know? And so actually I tuned out of SharkDAO for a couple of months and then had come back to January of the next year and some of the enthusiasm had died and I was able to like become a contributor. But anyway, so that's exciting, doing crypto stuff at nights and weekends, doing data science during the day. And then the bear market hit and I just saw all of those people get washed out. Like all of the hucksters and carnival barkers, they all just went away. And then who was left were like all of the people I wanted to work with. And so like, you know, my CEO at the time, who was a friend, I just straight up told her like, hey, I'm going back to cryptocurrency. I don't know how, but like the timing is right. And of course, that's like was a contrarian move in a sense. because like the bear was very obviously happening and people were.
She's like, Chris, are you crazy?
You know?
It's a bull market for science
not the
right
right
now.
time for this.
All the
data
VCs
science,
pull
sure.
out and you jump back in. That's fantastic.
And I jump back in. It's like, what about, forget this AI stuff. I'm going back in. So that was it, right? Like I just decided like, oh, these are the builders. This is the time to build. I've seen tech cycles. This is the moment. And so was just sort of my nights and weekends and NFTs and whatever, the little bit of DeFi I was playing with. I knew DAOs were the thing I wanted to do. So it was like, I want to go work on software, DAO software, which actually at the time was a little bit of a meme. So it was like, people were like, what do you want to do? And it's like, I want to build DAO software. I'm like, yeah, everyone's building DAO software, But through that, found Charmverse. Alex Poon, who's the CEO of Charmverse, I met him. And actually, he was like, "We're not hiring product people, but yeah, let's chat."
That's the mark of a good founder is we're not hiring, but let's chat because you never know.
Yeah, totally. And then I was like, "Let's have another chat." And then next thing you know, we just sort of hit it off. And I joined Charmverse maybe a year and a half ago.
So what is
so
Charmverse?
That was like my second.
Can you double click on that?
So Charmverse. Yeah. Charmverse is DAO coordination software, or sometimes we call it operations software. And the elevator pitch is that it's like a Web3 Notion. And so it has a lot of the design paradigms as Notion. You have pages, you can link them, you have slash commands. If you're familiar with Notion, like your day one, Charmverse is a good experience. But then we have some of these kind of crypto features on top of it. And so one just being token gating, we have bounties, we have proposals. We now have a forum, so people can leave their Discord and talk in asynchronous time on Charmverse.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just kind of all that stuff, right? You can log into your wallet, all of that stuff. And so I joined Charmverse. It was very early, have been building it for the last year and a half. Really love the team, love the product. We now have Optimism uses it for their grants council uses it for retroactive funding. We've just
I saw that.
Safe Grants use it. Have lots of DAOs use it for their internal operations. And so anyway, it all kind of worked out great for me because it was like I wanted to do DAOs. I built the DAO software. Our DAO software got popular. I'm now like I'm very close to so many of the prominent DAOs in the space and smaller DAOs too. And so one really cool thing is like I have this bird's eye view of like how lots of different DAOs operate. And so it also gives me this, like, my one pet peeve is like people will say what DAOs can't do, or DAOs are inefficient, or whatever, but a million things they say. And it's like, there are so many different types of DAOs out there, right? Where people being like, these things should be more centralized. I'm like, yep, those exist. These things should be more decentralized. Like those exist.
It's like saying, like saying, I hate companies. Companies don't work.
That's what
I would say.
This LLC, even more specifically, right?
Yeah.
Every DAO has different ideas of the definitions of D, A, and O.
Totally. Now, I actually try not to use the term DAO anymore. And this maybe can come to like launching a couple of DAOs. But when we launched Energy, which is the last kind of thing I was involved in, and obviously we'll get into this. My one major contribution was like, let us not call this a DAO, please. Like, let's call this a collective. We're a creative arts collective, or
we did the exact same thing. We're about to launch our TNS DAO, but it's not going to be a DAO. It's going to be called the Yellow Collective, and it's going to be a club, an on-chain club.
Great. I think it's great because what happened with Purple, and again, I think we're getting a little ahead of myself here, is that like I realized everyone brought their DAO baggage to Purple. And it was like, if you had a bad experience, you think that's how DAOs operate, right? So like everyone brought their bad experiences to Purple. First with their resistance to it, and then like once they were in the inside, it's like, where's the Constitution? It's like, oh, we're not that kind of DAO guys, So the word is just very
There's
loaded.
a DAO for that. It's called Constitution DAO.
Yeah, totally. So anyway, now I'm at Charmverse, professionally in the space that way. I'm a contributor to many DAOs. None that have paid me yet, but it's like
one
day. Something. Yeah, there's like a troll in the Nouns community. It's like a shift of.
It doesn't narrow it down.
I like feel for. Yeah, I know, but I blocked him so long ago that I don't remember.
Liitus, probably Liitus.
That's it, right? That's it, right? So that's it. So when the public goods, is this like all Nouns people watch your pod here? Is that the core?
No, yes and no. Like we definitely have some viewership outside too, but yeah.
All right, cool. I just didn't want to go too inside baseball without. So I helped. Okay, so we probably should go a little bit into the crypto thing, but I am a delegate in Nouns, and I sponsor a prop for Public Goods Beer, and the prop didn't pass. I still really loved it and wish it did. And so he was on.
I love that prop.
Cool. So that troll was like, have a tweet, which is like, Chris is a grifter, and he's like getting money from all these DAOs. He was trolling like Builder. He was trolling all my DAOs, mostly I just ignore the trolls, right? But I did like kind of respond. I've been responding. I had my own tweet, which was just like, hey, I've been in DAO for 2 years. I have never been paid from a DAO. And then someone sort of reached out to me and was like, hey, maybe you should. Like, this is the part of the experience that you don't have. And like, you're like, a leader, by example, a leader in purple. And so maybe you should be that. Like one tweet that like flipped my mindset, which was like, oh, I totally do have to try that side. Like, what's it like getting paid? What's it like when you don't get paid? Like, so this year I'm a little bit more interested in taking on small projects for DAOs and sort of experiencing that side of it too. Well, we just know the RFV playbook is to sow a lot of discord. And like in retrospect, it's like, oh my God, that guy is just an RFV agent because he's doing all of the things from their playbook that they've done to the other DAOs that they've rated,
Interesting.
It's like, especially in Nouns DAO at the end there, it was like, you only had to flip a handful of votes to like block a proposal, right? So if one or two people saw his tweet and believed that was a grifter and so therefore voted against it, like RFV wins, right?
By the way,
it took me a long time.
He's been awfully quiet lately. Haven't seen anything from him in a while, interestingly enough.
I mean, it's not a surprise. When I learned about the Aragon, like how RFV kind of rated Aragon DAO, they've all sort of clicked. I'm like, oh, this is happening in Nouns. Like, I see it now. I see the trolls. I see what's happening in Discord. Like, this is just straight the playbook, Like, they're doing it in public. We all see it, But anyway, those
very transparent.
It was totally transparent, right? And anyway,
but that's what excites me.
There have times ahead.
Yeah, that's what excites me about the fork. We just recorded another pod earlier today with Snacks from Pizza DAO. We talked a lot about the fork, and one of the things that we both agreed on is just like how exciting it is to just have traded the ETH that the DAO never needed for alignment that we have just not had for some time, and we've been so embroiled in this battle,
It really does feel like we're hitting a time machine button and just going back to a year ago.
Totally.
Honestly.
Well, I wonder. It's like if you're not like deep in Nouns, this fork thing is just weird. Like not that many DAOs fork. We have a mechanic that's like pretty novel, but I feel like from the deep outside, it feels like Nouns is in distress. But it feels like on the inside, it's like hella excitement, great, we're going to go do fun stuff again.
Like, no, we've been in distress.
But you know what, though?
The group chats are lit. That's it.
Speaking of time and time machines, though, I mean, time will be the healer of that, So over the next 6 months, that's when people are going to say, I put up a meme recently about the Grinch, like looking down on Whoville and being like, wait, how are they still celebrating Christmas? I stole Christmas. That's going to be people in 6 months looking back on Nouns and be like, wait, they're still doing this shit? Didn't they get raided? Didn't they get split? Didn't they get forked?
What happened? Yeah.
Yeah.
But the energy is high, right? The group chats are fun.
Farcaster is high energy. So let's dig into that a little bit. You are a big fan of the Farcaster protocol. So how did you come across Farcaster?
I just came across Farcaster via a tweet from DWR, one of the founders. I don't know him. I didn't know him at the time at all, and so it must have been an algorithm thing or a retweet or something. And just part of working in product is like I love to play with every product, and so I saw it and it was interesting, and so I DM him. He sends me an invite. Very early, it was like I don't know. I'm a sub 500 user, so I was pretty early. And
who's counting?
I mean, I don't know the exact number at least, But I joined small network, like maybe I guess I was like the 500th person, right? So that's how small it is. And I actually didn't realize it at the time, maybe how small it was at the time. But what I found was like a version. It's a little different now, but it still has these vibes. But like in the very early days, it was like a very intellectual crypto Twitter. It was like a very intellectual crypto Twitter where it was like, in fact, in the early days, like Brian Armstrong was in there casting, and like Pete Marco was casting. It was like, oh, these are all the people, like, Jacob's been a big supporter since day one. So it's like, oh, cool. These are all like the really smart crypto people. It's all very elevated. There's no dunking. They're trying to have actual conversations. And I was just like, that was it. That's what I was looking for. Like, it is like these are positive vibes. I also like, unrelated to crypto or anything, it was like at the time I was feeling like Twitter was just like such negative vibes. I'll just say, like, having kind of deep dived into Warpcast, I now believe Twitter has negative vibes by design. But anyway,
100%.
I mean, the quote tweet is meant to make fun of people. It's like, it was designed. Certainly, that's like the number one thing it's used for, is to make fun of others. So anyway,
to say nothing about the subtweet, even more.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I find this place. It's like literally like crypto paradise. It's like, everyone's in there. It's very positive sum. People are checking out each other's projects. But then, like, what hit me was there was crazy builder energy at the time that like reminded me of like the early days of Twitter when they had a really robust API and people were building lots of stuff. And some of it was useful, and some of it was just crazy and made no sense, but was creative. And I was like, oh, all the creative hackers are here. And then it's like, you sort of realize like, oh, this will always be this way because no one can lock down the API. This is like, it doesn't take long for you to realize like, oh, a social protocol is probably how we should be doing this stuff. So it was really hooked. Just was a contributor, whatever I posted through, another couple of months after that. And then inspired by just the builder activity, like the crazy good stuff. And also, like, I'll just say, today, there are venture-funded companies in Farcaster. There are companies that have gotten, individuals that have gotten large grants. There's, revenue positive. There's just a whole mix of stuff happening, like you would expect on any network. But early on, there wasn't, right? It was like, it was too small for everyone to invest in a company around. And so there was just like all of this kind of, like, hacking for hacking's sake. Which is
and a guy making purple coats. Don't forget him. Don't forget Les.
Yeah, totally. That's downstream of this story. So there's a lot of like energy of hacking for hacking's sake. And then I was thinking about how do we retroactively fund these people?
And that's where Purple DAO.
And that's where Purple came, right? So it was like, how do we fund this stuff? And, separately, I'm like still in love with Nouns DAO at the time, still today, right? But at the time. And, maybe sometimes people are like, why would you choose Purple as a Nowish DAO? And I was like, well, it was kind of what I knew. Like, if someone else started, it would maybe have been a juice box DAO. I don't know,
So before we get into it, to summarize, because, I'm assuming most people listening to this will know what Purple DAO is, but for anybody who doesn't.
Yeah.
2-minute pitch of what Purple DAO is. And
I like 2 seconds. 2 seconds. Go.
2 seconds.
Pitch. It's purple.
Purple is not a DAO. Done.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Purple and DAO is subjective. That's it.
So Purple is a Nowish DAO whose goal is to help proliferate the Farcaster ecosystem and community. And what that really means is like we fund projects on the Farcaster protocol with a goal of growing that protocol and spreading the meme of Farcaster in a sense, right? So like I actually just was like a cast. It was like, hey, let's do like a Nowish DAO and like let's fund the builders doing all this cool stuff, in an altruistic way. And it just resonated, It was just like I mean, I've come to think of like now tweets and posts and casts as like these constant trial balloons, and it's like, you throw out 10 and 9 of them are duds, and then one of them just catches fire, and next thing you know, you have a new DAO.
How many stories started with? It all started with a post. It all started with a cast. It all started with a tweet.
In a lot of ways, it's like how do you like?
First, there was pronouns.
Totally. Yeah. I think my theory behind that a little bit is just kind of being deep into meme theory, and then thinking about memes as like very expansive, like democracy is a meme. It's like it's not a real thing; it's a meme. We all like kind of agree that it's a thing that we want to propagate. And I think like you can actually like it's very hard to create a meme from scratch, right? Like trying to manufacture a meme. I think that probably never works. But a tweet or a cast can sort of like it's a thought, but then all of a sudden your thought is a meme because you realize right away like, oh, there are other people who want to do this, And so that's how it started. A couple of people slid into my DMs and were like, "Hey, let's do this." In fact, a couple of like smart contract devs were like, "Cool, I'm already forking the nouns contracts. Like, we'll just spin up this thing, right?" It was like maybe little nounish, and then also Jacob then joined the chat and said like, "Hey, we're building Nouns Builder. You guys should launch on this." And so
Jacob is so
that
great
was really
for that.
helpful.
I don't know how he has the time for that, but he has such a good finger on the pulse of what's going on in Nouns and in some of the other Ethereum ecosystems, and he's so good for reaching out. He's done it to me several times as well. When he like, for example, when we started doing this podcast, he saw that we were doing. He reached out right away, and he was like, "Why aren't you putting these as 1155's collection on Zora?" And I was like, you know what? I don't know. No, actually, I did have an answer for him. The reason why we weren't doing it is because they were too big. So this is a video pod. Even if we do it at 480p, it's going to be like 2 gigs probably by the time we're done. And the limit was 1 gig. So I told him that. I was like, we would love to, but I don't really see the value in just doing like an image thumbnail representing a podcast. If it's going to be the podcast, it should be the podcast. And he said, well, basically, hold my beer. And the next day he came back and he was like, okay, 2 gig limit. Let's do it. So I love Jacob for that.
That's not an exaggeration, by the way.
No, it was literally
the next day.
Yeah. Look, here's my one take on Jacob, which is like when he suggests, he never tells you to do anything. He's just like, he suggests things you should do. You should always do them. Like, don't think too hard about it. Like the guy who is on the zeitgeist told you to do a thing. He was actually seminal in a couple of things we did for Purple. So anyway, Purple gains momentum. Builder DAO joins the scene. Not Builder DAO. Nouns Builder joins the scene. We're like aggressively testing it and testing that. We have a Telegram that's starting to grow. It's about 200 people. And my very first artwork was Nouns with a purple shirt. It was actually a purple shirt with the Farcaster logo, but it was all of the other traits of Nouns. I think Jacob was the one who was like, "This should just be a purple square." And
really?
And
That's
I was
too
like,
funny.
yeah, and I thought a lot about that. No, it can't be a purple square. And then decided like, yeah, it should be a purple square. So we launched that, right? And then, and like right away, it, obviously I could speak about Purple for days, but like right away, the first one went for like 3 ETH. And then the second one went for like 2 ETH. And then it was like those first 20 tokens were like, I wanted to join my DAO, so it was like, I wound up like selling all these NFTs to like give enough ETH to go join the DAO I just created. And so really we like amassed a treasury. Like,
that's a fantastic sign, by the way.
Yeah. Hey, lead us.
You've hit market fit if you make a DAO
you can't even get in.
Can't afford to join.
Hey, lead us. Check this out. I had to sell all these NFTs to join my own DAO.
Just to join my own DAO. That's how much of a grifter I am. So that's the first 20 tokens just popped. So next thing you know, we're like less than a month into it. We have a real treasury. And then that sort of is a self-perpetuating machine, right? And actually it's not. Like, I'm a big proponent of the Nouns flywheel. And so what I was doing, like my activation energy was like, we need to do stuff. Like, you do stuff with your treasury, people see you doing stuff, and then people join. And that really worked in the early days. And, we like retroactively funded. That was like my favorite prop, and the favorite thing we did was like our very first retroactive funding round. We got to pay the people who inspired us to do this in the first place,
That's cool.
So we have a retroactive funding round, which is submissions closed.
On
yesterday, voting opened on Prop House. And it's super cool still that it's still going, and we get to, and it's just like, there's so much creative energy happening on Farcaster and so much building. Now, like, we still get to do that, but that very first time was like, oh, cool. Like, the 5 winners were like were the reason why we started this thing in the first place. So that's, I guess, brings you up on Farcaster. Farcaster, what is it today? It's still what I described. It's like, the common interest of everyone is that, I'll just, if people aren't aware, like, Farcaster is invite only, not for long, but it's invite only. It's highly curated by DWR. In the early days, you had to DM him, and then he would often say, like, give me your GitHub, or like, show me your crypto projects. And so it was like civil resistance via DWR. So it's all real people, all who love Ethereum, all who were like working on real things, right? And then we had invites. So we got to invite our friends, but, we all kind of did the same thing. And so it is a small social network. It's a social protocol, but there's an app called Warpcast, which is the social network on top of it. And it's still that, right? It's still like,
if you're listening to this podcast and you're not on Farcaster, and you own a little noun or a Nomo noun, drop into our DMs because we can get you an invite and get you on Farcasters. So before it closes. Before it closes to invites, which is soon, right. I think, right?
Which is soon, October. It's really just like it's like one way is like it's like a crypto Twitter, or it's like a Twitter thing. But the thing that's harder to describe is like the culture is just radically different. It's like a positive place. Like there's not a lot of dunking. There's not it's not like that stuff doesn't exist at all. But it's like much more positive, and sort of the leaders in that community all kind of lead by example with positivity. And so it's a very different feel to it. And then recently they launched the channels feature, which is almost like subreddits, and you can cast into a channel and you can read just the channel.
And, very much early Reddit, very much early Reddit vibes for sure. Reddit has changed a lot.
Energy. And so like I follow like NBA on it, and NFL, and like what Purple has its own channel. Nouns has a channel. Like Optimism has a channel. Like just people interested in EZM have a channel. And so now it's like that same kind of good vibes, good people now across many interests that become really easy to find. So that's that's a long way of saying what Farcaster is.
We love the Farcaster around here. And now, speaking of builders, Bill, who's very active builder in Farcaster and also a member of Purple DAO, is building a Spaces product as well. So we're going to be doing some testing with Abura, I think it's called, and it's basically another app on top of the protocol that's going to allow some kind of a Spaces like product.
Yeah, I've used it. It's pretty fantastic.
Nice.
There's a lot, like the thing about Farcaster is like there's lots of these decentralized socials, from Blue Sky to whatever, even Threads, maybe in theory, Mastodon, Nostra. I think Lens and Farcaster fall in a similar category, where one of the things that's really powerful is like your wallet is connected to your account. And so therefore there's like things you can do. Like I can create a whitelist of everyone who follows me, an allow list. So then I can mint an NFT, and everyone who follows me gets it for free. Everyone else has to pay. The Warpcast app looks at your wallet for certain things. When a vote goes up in Purple, all of the members get a notification.
Which is awesome.
When I mint something,
we need to get that hooked up for Nouns because it doesn't do that yet, and we need it to.
Totally.
Yeah,
and I think
AlphaCaster
that'll happen soon.
Which is also built by Bill, and I love AlphaCaster, but we need it built into Warpcaster. I think would be amazing.
Yeah, once Warpcaster started sending notifications to Purple members, our like voting engagement like 5x maybe.
Because you can vote in the app essentially, right?
It actually kicks you out to AlphaCaster. You click the notification, AlphaCaster comes up, you vote. It's pretty smooth. But yeah, and then let me just to rewind. Part of this history is that Purple was the first DAO to launch on Nouns build. Just was. It's not like a private or anything.
No flex. A bit of a flex.
I mean, look, I was the first one to press that button to play the contract, and I remember being very scared of like, what is about to happen?
This is actually just to prove how early it was. I remember the day that it launched. I hadn't really been following the Nouns builders super closely because I was working on like other stuff, and when it launched, I was so confused because I thought. I heard people talking about Builder DAO, but the first thing I saw was Purple DAO, and I like confused the two. I was like, why is it like that? Why are they all talking about Oh!
Yeah. Well, why did Purple DAO beat Builder DAO to their own DAO? How'd they do that?
Is this the real question? It's because Nouns.build was cool. Nouns.build was made by Zora. So 100%. Zora built that.
Right.
And Builder DAO did not exist. So that's why it was like, well, the company behind it was, the builders behind it were Zora. The first DAO was Purple. And then Zora had like, I'm sure this is always their plan, but then they started like motivating to like make sure that the protocol Builder DAO, Nouns build protocol was controlled by a DAO. And so that was how Builder DAO happened. And then of course, there was a big Nouns prop, and they got funded, and then Builder DAO was a thing. So October 25th is Purple's 1-year anniversary, and it's also kind of Nouns Builder's 1-year anniversary. because it was the day the protocol hit mainnet. So that's coming out.
Very cool. Exciting. Are you guys doing anything special?
Yeah, so we're motivating around now what we're going to do, but we're definitely going to celebrate. We've got a couple of options. We'd like to do some like real life activations. We always sort of like Purple should always be supporting Farcaster. And so to like throw ourselves a party is like a very awkward position for us. And
Right.
so it's just sort of like October 25th should be a day we all celebrate Farcaster. And
Fark
we
Day.
have to go prop pass for the Fark Day. And the what we would like to do is some combination of lots of meetups and parties all over the world, whether they're dinner parties or bigger things, and then some flagship kind of IRL event in LA. And then figure out the online version of that for all of the members who aren't in one of those cities. I will be one of them, actually. To like, have a speaker from LA live stream in, and then have someone from New York live stream in. So we're trying to figure out how to throw the appropriate party, and then also to honor Builder DAO and Nouns Builder, which is, again, it's their first day, and all of the, we want to honor all of the people who won grants from Purple, celebrate them, and all of that stuff. So yeah, I think it can be really fun.
Cool. Did you
That
see the
sounds
meme
awesome.
that Volky posted recently? He was like, "You fork, we fark, we are not the same."
I did do that. That was really good. Yeah.
Let's talk about another not DAO, Energy, which is one that you just launched recently, which I think was one of the first L2 DAOs, if not the first L2 DAO to be launched using Nouns Builder. You love getting that provenance.
I think it was the first again.
Was it the first one?
We do. Yeah. I think like to some extent, it's like I'm either fearless or stupid. And I see a new thing.
It's
I'm like, I'm going to
how
try
often those two coincide.
Confused, yeah. Well, like a few things actually. It's like you can only learn I learn by doing. So that's number one, right? And it's like, action produces information. And I'm not always going to sit around and wait for other people to do it, to learn through watching other people do it.
Worst case scenario, you learn.
Totally, right? And it's like, I guess this is part of like being in the startup industry for so long. Like failure is like, that's the most likely
that is a result.
case. That not only is a result, it is like probably what's going to happen. It's like you're trying to be the 1% success. Like think of all the DAOs. Nouns is the 1%, right? So you just at some point
actually,
you're like really you just get comfortable with that.
Soon to be half of 1% actually, but it's okay.
That's right. It's 0.5% at the moment.
The so Energy is sort of the latest thing I did, and this also started with a tweet. I think it was still called Twitter then. And it was the day Zora Network launched. And I don't know, I just really grokked the OP stack and the super chain, like immediately was struck by that vision. And
we had Benji on our podcast 2 weeks ago. He was incredible.
Amazing.
We had a huge talk about the super chain and all that stuff. So OP stack.
Yeah, amazing. And then like as an artist, I like love Zora and everything they've been doing. And it's like a little kind of Zora ecosystem community. And so I was really excited to see when Zora Network launched. And again, I tweeted like someone should create Purple for Zora Network with a goal to just
devs do something. Devs do something.
Devs do something. DAO do something. So someone should create Purple for Energy for Zora Network and fund artists and creative technology on the Zora Network. And that was like, a little mini viral thing. And even though so what happened was like all of the people I like love in the Zora community started commenting. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. You should do it. You should do it. And then I was basically saying like, no, I never will start a DAO again. Like I'm done like that. Purple, what we haven't talked about is like the craziness of starting a DAO and sort of the emotionally taxing experiences you have as a co-founder of a DAO. And so I was like, nope, someone else should do this. Like, I'm definitely not doing it, no. And over time, like they just kept coming into the same people just kept coming into my DMs. Like, all right, are we going to do this? Like, are you going to do it? And then one of the ideas in that initial, I basically like when in the initial phase when people were like, you should start this. And I was like, hey, I'm willing to be like one of many people who did this. And, and in fact, Purple, we had 3 co-founders in Purple, but the day of launch and that whole week and everything, there were 2 co-founders, startup was imploding. And so they just sort of disappeared. And so for practical purposes, I was like a solo founder of it and then had some like behind the scenes emotional support from them, which was great and value, of course, but I like just full on took it on. I was the one on the Twitter Spaces, on the video chats, like
You've
just,
been
like, I was
voluntold.
just I was just nouns advocate that I never knew that I was going to be. Which is just actually just a point. Like I think people maybe understand nouns a little bit better now. But one of the crazy things about launching Purple was I was in Farcaster, which is like maybe the most sophisticated Ethereum community you could be in, and no one knew how Nouns DAO worked.
Really?
And I had like the assumption that everyone, again, this is a year from so like crypto time's crazy, but that was like only a year ago today. But a year ago today, it was like, all these people didn't know how it
in
worked.
the old days.
And so
a year ago.
Yeah. And so I've spent a tremendous amount of time just teaching people what was happening, how this stuff works, how I can't even rug you if I wanted to, And that was like one of the criticisms. Chris is just going to rug you all. And it's like, that's not really how this thing works, And like explaining the smart contracts to people. So anyway, fast forward to Zora Network. I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. And then people were really like pushing on me. And it was like, okay, cool. I'll be one of like a huge group of people to do this. And then someone had suggested it should start with 10 founders. And the very first thing we should do on day one is vote away the founder allocation. And I was like, that's super interesting. And like, that's something I could get on board with, It's like, so you have stewards. You have 10 people who are invested emotionally and obviously with the token. And you have like these early stewards who can like shape the community. And the fact that it was like the hit list of Zora people that like I collect their NFTs and stuff. I was like, hey, cool, this could really happen. I still was like, great, someone should do that. I'll be one of those people, But then like, as the DMs start flying in and then, I'm a member of Builder DAO. So I see the L2 stuff getting built and I realized it was getting close to launch. And then it was like, okay, I'll create the Telegram group. I'm not starting this DAO.
By the way, Chris, just as an aside, this is what you're describing here is one of the main things that I'll say back to someone when they say, you don't share your ideas because people will steal them. Like in CC, as an argument against CC0. Don't share your idea. Yeah. Like I wish people would steal my ideas, because people just don't do things generally. And so if you are a doer, you never need to worry about sharing your ideas in public because you will always do them before anyone else gets around. Anyway.
1,000,000%. And I was always like, someone else do this, and they're like, great, when are you going to do it? It's like, no, you're missing a word there.
No, I meant you should. Devs, do something. He yelled at the mirror.
Devs, do something. And so then I created Telegram, which is easy. And then all those people flooded in, and we actually have a lot of people flooded in. And then we were sort of workshopping it on in a Google Doc or something. And the day just came where Builder DAO was launched on Zora Network and Optimism and Base, and we were just sort of in position to launch. And so we did. The goal always was to fund artists and creative technologists on the Zora Network. It's obviously like pretty expansive mission, I think. And it just here's the kicker. Purple, I made the artwork with a purple square, right? Through this sort of like Telegram group, I made it. It's CCO. If anyone wants purple, it's yours.
You wielded the color
rights
picker.
Reserved. That's right.
Actually, can you do that again? But say 0 rights reserved, please. We need that.
That's what I meant. Yeah, that's right. So 0 rights reserved. So when this Telegram group happened, one of the really talented artists, a guy named Oxen. Oxen is like, I would call him like the resident Farcaster artist. Like he was, I was early in Farcaster. He was already minting Farcaster artwork before I even joined, Wow. So he joined and, he had been a Purple member, but we didn't really know each other that well. And so he just like got really inspired and started making art. And then I got a little chance to like collab with him. And then here's the thing. He did all of the work. I think I should like it came to a point where he did so much work that it was like, okay, got it. I need to be the one to get this over the finish line because this guy just did so much work,
On the art specifically? Is that what you mean?
On the art, the artwork. Like so many hours, right? Our artwork for Energy is beautiful.
It is. Agreed.
Different types of Zorbs on different types of backgrounds. And it's just really, really great. And so while I'm seeing this, it's like, artwork is really beautiful. But then I'm also seeing like the hours he's putting in. And it's like, okay, I can like pretend I'm on the sidelines for so long. And it's like, I see this guy grinding. It's like, I'm going to help. I know how to do this. That's the other thing. It's like, I've launched these. So, and everyone else was kind of passive, but people were, helped with the docs and everything, but, just kind of passive. And so totally, he really did almost everything. And then it was like, cool, like, great, you should launch this thing. And then he had asked me, like, can you launch it? I don't want to screw something up. And whatever. So I was like, yeah, cool.
The rest is history.
Yeah, well, the thing is that so now I have Providence as the first L2 builder DAO, even though I think someone else
this
gave
has
the bulk
been
of the work.
how Chris Carella founded another DAO he didn't mean to found.
This is it. That's
Part
right.
2.
And then we totally did the first. We actually started with 13 stewards. We called the co-founders 13 stewards. The first, deploy to mainnet. All 13 people get a token. And then I immediately put up a vote to disband the founder allocation. And so that's the status we're in. And I'll just tell you the pros and cons of this. The pros is we started with just a great group of people that you want to be in the DAO.
Yeah.
The cons is something I hadn't fully considered. People were coming to me afterwards and they were like, yeah, it's just not that sexy to buy token 14. And if you think about in Purple, those first 20 tokens went for a premium. Literally, after token 20, the price came down a lot, right? Because you weren't one of the first 20. Whereas we didn't even give people the chance around energy. It was just oh, there you go, token 14's out there,
That's interesting because we're planning to do something very similar for our collective, and so maybe we'll reconsider that. I wonder if there's a way you could do the first 20 as provenance, and then do an airdrop to your founders afterwards.
Yeah, maybe it's through a proposal you can make an airdrop. What we did with Purple was we just had a founder multi-sig because we just copied what everyone else in the Nouns world was doing, what Nouns did and what Little Nouns did. And I totally regret that because it's I don't know, because multi-sigs are not good. And if you have one founder who's not that engaged, it's pretty complicated. And then also we couldn't vote as individuals. We had to vote as a group. And I think the Nouners are very good at that,
still struggle with that sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
They're pretty good at it. It's pretty hard. Whereas it totally is better that you just give everyone their own token and then they can vote. And then, by the way, me and you as founders can have different opinions and now we can vote differently, right?
Yeah.
It is just a better way. And then
again, with Nouns, we've started to see more of that with Seneca and 41 splitting their votes off and voting individually more.
Yeah. But I think I couldn't figure out a way, you guys should think through a creative solution. I still can't think of a good way to do it. One is that, which is you, after the 10th one is minted or something, you put up a prop to airdrop back on everyone. That assumes that you are in the DAO. That also assumes that the other 9 people think this is a good idea at this point.
Yeah. It's a bit of a risk, I guess.
It's not without risk.
Yeah.
But anyway, you still have the right people. It still seems worth it. You definitely lose some of that hype. And by the way, Purple was hyped, not by any strategy. There was no hype-beast strategy around this thing at all. But when I look in retrospect, we launched Purple, it was hyped. We launched Energy, it was not as hyped. I could just see the difference between the two of them,
Yeah.
Purple has an unfair advantage of being built on top of a protocol that people are excited about. That's a big boost for us.
Well, Zora also people are excited about, but maybe it's not a social network. True. So, yeah.
Purple was
L2s maybe need a little bit more time.
By the environment it was in. You didn't need to hype Purple because everybody was already hyped. They were just looking for an outlet.
That's really it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're also going to be on an L2 as well. We haven't quite decided which of the OP stacks we're going to be launching on. We've been going back and forth. Although I might have had an epiphany while we were recording this podcast. I think we might launch on base because we've been thinking of it different ways. One is to launch on Optimism because our daily edition collection we migrated to Optimism a couple months back. So there's some argument to be had for keeping things consistent. And but then all of our podcasts that we're on right now, these are minted on Zora because it just felt right to mint them on Zora. Zora is like a creator's platform. It's about media. And so then we were thinking, well, the new DAO, should it also be on Zora? Because it's our collective is going to be all about supporting artists and supporting content creators as well in the Nouns community. But now I'm wondering, maybe base is the way, because first of all, our meme is going to be the yellow collective. So definitely taking a page out of your book at Purple. Great. It's just going to be a yellow logo with very faint noggles on it. And that kind of like matches the on-chain summer yellow meme. And at that point,
cool.
at that point, we would have Nomo on Optimism, all of our podcasts on Zora, and our DAO on Base.
On
and maybe
Base,
that's kind of fun as a way of like
collect all the L2 Infinity Stones.
Yeah, exactly. This is literally doing
And
it
you need
live. You know, maybe I'll cut this out in post, but it's sometimes fun to think through these things.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I have a lot of thoughts on and some experience now on L2s. And one, I'll just say like I deployed. I don't know how much I deployed, how much it cost to deploy the purple contract, but I remember being like, ouch, like
$300, probably $400.
Yeah.
I deployed Energy for like less than $5.
Amazing.
I put up a prop for 3 cents. I voted for 5 cents. You know, so it's like it totally changes the equation. So I'm a big supporter of DAOs on L2s. With the kind of only argument to not do it is that people still believe NFTs have provenance on Ethereum, and so your DAO's NFT will have more provenance on Ethereum. I do not subscribe to that.
I think it's going to change, and I'll tell you why I think that's going to change is because I used to be one of those people, and I'm not anymore.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to imagine in 2024 people minting NFTs on Ethereum. You know, it's like things have changed. But here's like my next piece of learnings that you should think through. Because your treasury is a smart contract, it only exists on the network you deploy it to. And so, in your sort of example, you now have your treasury in Base, right? Right. And then you want to do a drop posal. It has to be on Base. There's no way to do a drop posal on another L2.
Not yet, anyway. But yeah.
Not yet.
Maybe future in the super chain, but
totally that. Or even there's some proxy contracts that maybe look promising. But what we did at Energy was, we launched Energy. We're excited. The artwork's amazing. Coinbase launches on-chain summer like 3 days later. And it was like, we just felt so drowned out. We just felt like so drowned out. And love the Base team, love Jesse. Like we were all kind of coordinating. Like everyone knew all this stuff was happening. So I don't feel like, but I don't think I expected the tsunami that on-chain summer was going to create in the first couple of weeks, especially. And so we were feeling really bummed. And then a certain, master of the zeitgeist was like, "Hey, you guys should just drop a Base NFT for on-chain summer." And so we did, right? So we dropped our summer Zorb, and we had like 5,000 mints. It was all free with the Zora protocol rewards, and Brian Armstrong retweeted it and stuff. So like it was like very successful. But the problem is that the DAO doesn't have provenance because we couldn't drop it from Zora onto Base. Right. And so me and Oxen sort of worked on it, and then I was like, dude, you should do it, and then he's like, no, you do it. And so even that one, it's like, actually it just is under my ENS.
But what you could do, and it's not perfect, but I mean, you could have an ENS that's owned by the DAO on Zora, and then just have a subdomain that's tied to a wallet. And yes, it's not real because someone controls the keys to that. That's not the DAO, but at least the ENS could be, base dot energy.
Totally.
Not ETH.
And maybe that's the thing. They're like the Park does that. The Park, which is a band and a music DAO.
We love the Park.
Right?
Yeah.
Love the Park. And you should have them on the show for sure. They're the best.
But
they have the Park.eth. Yeah, they're really great. The Park.eth is just, I think, a wallet that is controlled by someone. And then there's the treasury. And like these aren't like commingled funds, but it's like sometimes you just do stuff from the wallet because it's easier.
I mean, we do that too. Like we have mint.thenounsquare.eth, which is a subdomain controlled by me, and it's just to facilitate putting stuff like this on Zora because, like you said, it's really difficult to work with that provenance.
Now I'm in a situation where we never put an end date on that NFT. As always, if you think about this now, like in the Namish model, ultimately it's like, this is my initiative. I did it permissionlessly. The art was CCO. It was like, everyone was excited in Energy, but no one passed the prompt for this or anything, right? I just kind of did it. And I never put an end date. And it still keeps minting. And
it's
so like
still
these protocol rewards. Yeah, amazing. And like, so these protocol rewards are like racking up, right? So it's like every time I log into Zora because I want to mint something, it's like I see this big number. It like base rewards. I'm like, oh, those aren't actually mine. They're
Damn it.
They're the DAOs, right? And so then, by the way, it's just a little bit of acrobats to get money from Zora, money from Base over into a Zora smart contract. Yeah. And then the other thing is like, I'm in a situation where it's like, and then I minted another free mint base NFT, and just for fun, and it didn't like go sell a lot, but like I could no longer tell the difference between the protocol rewards,
Oh,
like
no.
and so I was like,
Oops.
so basically it's like, okay, so from my main ENS wallet, I can no longer mint on base on Zora because I want all the, I just want to
See,
funnel
this
all,
is a
make sure
good
all that stuff goes
argument
back
to
to the
have used
energy.
like a subdomain or something on a
Totally, we
first
should have
wallet.
done that. We totally should
Yeah.
have
Fix it in post.
done that.
Awesome.
I need my soundboard. I don't have it up for anywhere that. I was
This
just
is
gonna have to do it
this
live.
is a no soundboard zone. Too many soundboards on the Noun Square, so the zero rights reserved is a no soundboard zone.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
That's
what are your thoughts on the Nouns Fork? I've been asking people that have come on the show about it because obviously it's a very prescient piece of drama that's happening in the Nouniverse. So, what are your thoughts on the fork and what's your outlook going forward? By the time this drops, by the way, the fork will be in the rearview mirror. It will have happened. So what do you hope the next 6 months look like?
Yeah.
The first fork.
So here's what I think. I think forks are like, in the abstract, are good and are like a positive something. And then, one can imagine two Nouns DAOs doing great work. Is better than one Nouns DAO doing great work. And
one could hope.
So people often ask me about Purple, and I always say, like, well, if Farcaster gets as big as Twitter, there's going to be 1,000 Purples because it's just way too big for any one organization, right?
You already had
I believe in.
You already had a copycat, not a fork.
We did have a short-lived one, but I'm pro fork as like a mechanic. I think there's a lot of good that comes from forks, and it's like, obviously it comes a little bit from the open source world, but really it feels like this crypto native thing we have that we can fork.
Yeah.
I think, of course, now before we talked about minority protections and all that stuff, and totally all that stuff is great. And then I think about like the current fork is there are actually people who I've spoken to who like, they just need the money, right? Like they just, or it's not like they don't need, there are financial concerns, right? They have like real financial concerns. Nouns hasn't been going the way they wanted, and so they're out. And I'm like pretty happy for those people to be able to like reclaim what they wanted to reclaim. They're all like positive vibe people, like surprising number of good people. None of the core people, but I know some of those people who are like, I get it, you guys, I see why you're doing this. So,
I mean, there's been some surprises for sure. Like there's been some people who've joined that I didn't expect to see in there.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy for some people who like just needed to get out. And now they have like a real serious mechanism to get out. I'm not psyched that it was like all coordinated by an attack, right? Like that's like of course, the subcontext. And so like I sort of weigh those two things, which is like, well, mostly it's terrible that, it's like positive that we have a forking mechanic and that this is an option and that things, if the fork is happening, like there's a lot of good to that. And then there are some people I'm happy for who get out when they have to get out. And now there's like a good way to do that. But then the subcontext of the whole thing is that it was like a 6-month-long attack that not only stole money from early Nouns contributors who paid far more than 35 ETH for their Nouns. It was like
and
just
some of them
directly stealing from them.
And some of them will never get over that. Like obviously, like Beautiful NFTs is definitely done with Nouns, and you can think what you want about him. He has some interesting methods, but there are others like him. I'm sure. I know Zykes, who bought the first Noun for 600 ETH, popped up out of the ether when WAG was talking about the fork, and he was kind of like, "What the hell's going on?" So I mean, of course, if you're putting yourself in those shoes,
totally.
Yeah,
how can you be psyched if you're not great. Right?
But to your point, though, I do kind of agree that it sucks that the RFE raiders got what they wanted ultimately. But the silver lining, I guess, when I look back on it, is that at least Nouns reacted to this existential threat in a way that's constructive, both for Nouns and for hopefully future DAOs, both Nounish and otherwise.
Incredible.
At least we took that threat and we said, okay, how can we put energy into making a solution that maybe could in the future protect a real honest minority who needs to leave a DAO? And so, I'm happy that there's that constructive energy coming out of it, at least.
Totally. and the Burbs team did just heroic work.
Yeah,
It felt like maybe at the last minute they got thrown under the bus a little bit. Like, why do we even have a fork? And it's like, well, guys, we've been talking about this for 6 months. Like, but those guys are heroes.
They
and,
held a
so all that
snapshot
great
vote and everything. So I don't know why anybody was surprised.
The reason they were surprised is because they were gone, right? I mean, the person who was most just was not here in WAG's defense, and so. But I mean, that's crypto sometimes.
But then I'll just say, it's hard to put a time on it, but maybe the last 6 months just hasn't been the most fun time to be in Nouns. Every prop I put up got defeated, actually. And it's totally you just look at it and it's like, okay, RFV votes no. And can you get enough actual nouners to vote yes to you? That was the whole game. And then RFV is seeding Discord. And so you only, you lose one person, one good guy, and it really messes up your whole thing. And it was their whole strategy, right? And so all that being said, it was tiring, and it wasn't the most fun time being down. That being said, it's there's still so much good stuff. I go to East Denver and hang out with the NARS guys, and you're meeting Nanish people. The people are so good, right? You're meeting good people. The other thing that is always forgotten is no one needs money to do Nouns anything. The treasury is just the treasury. It's you guys do stuff. You're wearing goggles right now. It's it doesn't. None of this stuff requires a treasury.
I was on a Twitter Spaces yesterday on the roundtable, and we were talking about the fork. They had invited me and Prof. Reuter and 4156 on to talk about it. It was a really good conversation. And one thing I didn't get a chance to butt in on just because of the way the convo went, but I had wanted to, was that Began, the host, was like, well, what if in the future I want to do, a fork of Nouns to do a certain type of investment or whatever. Now I can just fork and go and do that, and now I can choose whether I want to leave or not. And I wanted to butt in and be like, well, just as a reminder, it's still an open source protocol. It's still a CC0 art. You don't need
do your thing and slap some.
You don't need to take a part of the treasury with you every time you have an idea. You can just go do it. And if it's a good idea, it should
even if you wanted to, you could just submit a proposal.
That too, sure, yeah. There's other ways.
My blame a little bit is even though those guys were, I don't know, maybe they were women. All those women, those RFV women, were blocking all of the props.
Yeah.
They weren't.
Hey, just give them their due. The fun stuff that was happening was someone giving me stickers, going to FWB Fest and someone handing me a pin, and so it's that. The community was still there. The vibe was there. So there was still a lot of that fun, but then the on-chain part was not fun. And I had mentioned before, it's that meta is shifting, and it seems like the fun is about to begin again.
I think so, yeah. I hope so.
So I'm super bullish on the future.
Morale has improved, So.
Oh, yeah.
Does that mean more funds can be deployed because morale has improved? I think. Is that how the meme goes?
More fun can be deployed.
More fun, yeah.
More fun. So I'm excited for the next 6 months or next year. I think, if I was going to put my cautious hat on, I'm cautious that these guys come back and attack again.
We should be.
There are avenues and vectors to do that, and there's even rational economic incentive to do that. And so something's to be on alert, but what you do see is all of the Namish people rallying and getting excited, and ideas happening in the group chat, and props going up in the candidates, and stuff is happening, right? And
also taking a stand too, because now not forking you're taking a pretty big stand, because like you said, we're in the middle of the bear market. Who couldn't use 36 ETH in their pocket easy peasy right now? Everybody could.
Totally.
I could.
Yeah.
There's a lot of there's a lot of even though if this, I believe that the risk-free value raiders are bad vibes. There's a lot of economic rationality to a few things. One, to what they were doing. If you told me I could buy a pair of sneakers today for $100 and sell it tomorrow for $1,000, I'm going to buy the pair of sneakers, right? So there's just something economically rational there. The second thing is
I made this exact argument, by the way, when we did the previous podcast with Snacks, and he stopped me and he interrupted me. He's like, I disagree with you. And I was like, well, how can you disagree that it's economically rational? And he said, money's not rational. I thought that was a pretty good.
I like that.
response.
I like that.
Anyway, continue.
The second thing is if you fork, the other economically, since it's coming out after the fork, the other economically rational thing is you should fork and then come back and buy 2 Nouns. Well, here we where everyone's kind of predicting a drop in the price, right? That remains to be seen, but we're predicting a drop in that. Like another economically rational thing would be like, well, trade your 1 for 2. So like
that's what Bones said he was going to be doing. 87 Bones, Nounburger.
But then the question comes down to reputational value. So, provenance and reputational value. How much will be ascribed to that remains to be seen.
I'm interested in that in general, and anyway, this is like, it just comes back to the people who held. It's like, that actually is not economically rational to hold. It's economic, even if you love nouns, it's economically rational to join the fork, come back and get 2. And so the people who are not are the true believers, and they're ascribe, what is the difference between the treasury and book value? It's like the mean value or the network value, as 4156 is saying, right? It's like, well, if you believe in that,
right?
Yeah, and they are network value. That's it, right? And so, what I think is like what remains of nouns, which is most of it, by the way, but what remains of nouns is like the highest quality people in all of Ethereum, who have positive attitudes, or positive, some thinkers, want to do really cool stuff, super creative people, great engineers, people with track records. And so, so what do you find yourself in? A smaller DAO with more talented people. It's amazing.
Chris, you're gonna make me blush. I'm just kidding.
It's distilling.
I agree. It is totally distilling. Yeah, it's like we're all.
I believe in like the mean value. When they talked about, when I was reading about the mean value, I didn't get it, and then I sort of realized that okay, so the difference between, like, why is there a premium? Like, the difference between the treasury and the auction is like the mean value. It still never really resonated with me. And then when it was started being called the network value, then I got it. It's like, I benefit so much from being in nouns that has nothing to do with the treasury, or nothing to do with any of this stuff. It's like, I just jump into Jesse Pollock's DMs because he's in nouns, right? And I'm in nouns.
Absolutely.
And
like,
so,
Jesse's come on our spaces. Without nouns, Jesse Pollock doesn't come on our spaces. I would go so far as to say, without nouns, Jack Butcher doesn't come on our podcast last week. Like, someone asked me, like, how did you get Jack on your podcast? And I was like, I just asked him, because we know each other through nouns, and that. So the network value is huge.
It's high. And then I do have a friend who is like on the fence about joining the fork or not, and she's not anti-nouns, but it's again, people are in their own sort of, you have to make your own financial decision in your own personal life and stuff. And I had said to her, like, I know you want to do projects in nouns, and so your plan is to come back, and I just don't know, what the reputational hit will be in this.
And by the way,
I do think, like,
it doesn't even have to be explicit. It's not like Nouns is going to get together and be like, if you sold your noun, you shall not be funded. But every nouner is going to have that in the back of their head, guaranteed. It's just impossible to avoid that. Right. So I guess we'll see.
I think, like, in the end, like, my advice to her, on one day I was like, absolutely don't do this. You're going to get crushed in the future. And then the next day I woke up,
a female nouner. That's amazing. They're in short supply. We need more of them.
Yeah, Vietnam, I think. But the second day I was like, I'm thinking about your situation. I actually don't, like, this is not a group of people who are going to, like, hold grudges. If you come back with some awesome nounish idea, we're going to go fund it. So go do what you have to do.
I think that's more or less what's going to happen.
I think everybody can tell the difference between somebody who's like exiting because they need liquidity at this moment, or because they just can't justify, staying for whatever reason, but they still want to be here, and people who are just trying to take advantage. Like, I feel like there's a significant difference.
Going back to the conversation I was mentioning that we had with Snacks about where he said economics isn't rational, and then he's a mathematician by training, so he started poking fun at economists at the same time and saying it's not a real science, blah blah blah, and kind of got down that rabbit hole. But we ended up, when I said, well, what do we call it then if it's not rational? If it's not a rational move to fork, then what is it? And what we kind of settled on is it's like a fear-based response. It's like a primal human response to uncertainty, is like fight or flight. So are you going to stick around and see this uncertainty? Are you going to be the person that pushes the button to start the DAO when no one else has ever done it? Back to your point earlier, Chris, or are you going to, play it safe, take your free money, and then let the dust settle? And I mean, it's maybe just down to different personality traits too, different personality types.
So one of the things I'm excited for is like Nouns just working with other organizations, where I, in my opinion, Nouns hasn't really traditionally embraced sub DAOs. There's a few things to discuss here. One, the thing that has been forgotten is like, I think 6 months ago or so, before the times, like you just didn't have to own a noun to self-identify as nouns, right? Like that's still true. And like I think most of the people who identify around nouns don't hold nouns, right? And like me too, right? Yeah. And so one, it's like just back to the basics of like, hey, the nouns community is large. It's not about these people. It's not about these folks. It's like, there's lots of us. But then one, it's like I see these opportunities of like, Farcaster developing, and like, what does that mean for Purple? And what Purple has and what Farcaster has is like crazy builder energy. And like Nouns is in a time where they need builder energy, So it's like, how do we work together? How do we transfer some of that energy over, right? And then, and for a year now, people have been saying like, let's put up a Nouns prop. And it's like, guys, it doesn't really work that way. And they're like, but we're a Nouns DAO. Of course they're going to fund us. I was like, no, they actually don't care about us. Like we're not that.
Ouch.
Like
yeah.
It just isn't like that, right? But it feels like lots of fresh ideas are on the table. People are much, are really open-minded right now. And so I'd be interested in seeing like, Nouns do the stuff, the bread and butter that it was really good at, and ambitious stuff, proliferate the meme, put sales and sail around New York City. But then and a bunch of the public good stuff, which I really loved, kept happening even in the dark times. But but I think there's just like also these other opportunities to like get involved in Farcaster, to get the purple builder energy involved, like all of this stuff happening on the super chain. How do we like participate in that as a DAO, as an ETH DAO, but respect base and optimism and all the great stuff that's happening there.
Amazing. I did want to ask you about, do you have time, like 1 minute, to talk about the Optimism announcement? Because I think that was really huge.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so tell us about that. You were just named to the Citizens House.
Yeah, so it's the Citizens House. So yesterday I got elected to the Optimism Citizens House. And the main role as a member of the Citizens House is that you vote on the retroactive funding. And so Optimism, world-class, best in the world, I think, at retroactively funding. And they have been using Charmverse as their platform to do some of this. And so I got really familiar with how that works. And obviously we've been doing retro funding since the day we launched Purple, and now into the history of some retro funding. And Gitcoin does all this great retro funding stuff. And so like I was kind of, I was there, but then I got like super, super kind of OP pilled watching them use my platform and support them directly. And then, and then someone nominated me. They knew I was involved in a lot of these DAOs, and that public goods is one of my passions, and that all of my DAOs kind of support public goods in various ways. And so I joined, and I guess they was like the first day, which really was nothing but like whatever. I got an email, and but when the next round of retroactive public goods funding happens, I like get to vote on the teams and help allocate the money.
That's amazing. I love it. Yeah, we had Benji on, and we spoke all about that, and he, that was one of the main reasons why he got involved in crypto too, is just because of the retroactive funding. And about the way he put it, what I thought was really interesting is it eliminated the martyr problem, where people didn't have to be a financial martyr to do good things in the Ethereum ecosystem.
Yeah, amazing. I think like Optimism specifically has like a business model to fund public goods. And like coming from, it's like I was a Linux user 20 years ago. And so just knowing like the struggles that open source projects go through, or their alignments with corporations, and how that can perverse the incentives, like just seeing for the first time, like an actual business model that is like funds public goods, is pretty mind blowing. And so I love Base and I love Zora, and I believe they will both contribute to sort of public goods funds. But Optimism is just out front and center, getting their validator fees, taking the profits, and pouring them back into public goods. It's like pretty amazing. And I think
that's why they're winning. I think that's why they're winning the culture war. People see that. Yeah. Well,
definitely. It's like a new internet. This is basically a new internet. That's what I'm excited about.
Amazing. Well, Chris, appreciate you agreeing to jump on with us. It was on short notice too. It's been super interesting to chat. I feel like we could probably go for like 3 or 4 hours, but we'll just do it another time. We'll invite you back and have you on for a part 2 sometime. Sound good?
I would love to. All right. Catch you guys later.
We'll see you on chain.
Cool. See you guys on chain.
See you guys.